Many of the companions of the Holy Prophet, they had their eye on the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is at the age of marriage. So many companions, they came to Rasulullah asking the Holy Prophet for the hand of his beloved daughter. One after the other, many notable companions came to the Prophet to ask for her hand, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would very politely decline their offer by saying, "Antadhiru fiha amr Allah," that this daughter of mine is not like any daughter. I have to wait for revelation before I decide who shall be her spouse. So one after the other, they came forward to ask for her hand, and Rasulullah would decline, and decline. Until many of the companions, they went to Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, who was in his early 20s, who was as young as many of the brothers that I see. In his early 20s, they came to him and they said to him, "Ya Ali, we've tried to ask for the hand of Fatima, and Rasulullah has not given us his daughter. We think that he's waiting for you. We think that if you ask, he will give you the honor of having his daughter in marriage." Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was reluctant. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was shy. He was even too bashful to bring up the subject. The Imam alayhi salam, the reason why he was reluctant, number one, you have to understand that he's a new migrant. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam wasn't raised in Medina. He's in a new city. He left Mecca empty-handed. He's been spending the greater portion of his adolescent life defending Islam. He's now a war hero. And the Imam alayhi salam doesn't have the financial resources. So the Imam alayhi salam was hesitant, but he was encouraged by many of the companions to come forward. And the Imam alayhi salam at this time in Medina, do you know what his job was? The Imam alayhi salam wasn't the CEO of a major company in Medina. The Imam alayhi salam was actually a farmer. There was a very strong agricultural industry in Medina. The Imam alayhi salam used to farm the land that belonged to a Jewish landowner. So the Imam alayhi salam was engaged in manual labor to sustain himself. And there's no shame in this. You know, some of us, we think that certain lines of work are beneath our status. There's a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Where the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi says, "Ma akala ahadun ta'aman qattu khayran min an ya'kula min amali yadih." The Holy Prophet says the best way to make a living, the best job, is to sustain yourself through your own work. And then he gives us an example. He says, وَإِنَّ نَبِيَّ اللَّهِ دَاوُودَ كَانَ يَأْكُلُ مِنْ عَمَلِ يَدِهِ. Rasulullah says, even Dawood was a prophet, and he was also a king. Even Dawood never took a stipend from his own treasury. Dawood alayhi salam, he used to work and he would sustain himself. So Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was making a very meager income as a farmer at the time. So many of the companions, they encouraged the Imam to go to the Holy Prophet and ask for the hand of Lady Fatima. So the Imam alayhi salam, he does. One day, he goes to the house of Rasulullah, the house of Salama. He goes to visit the Holy Prophet. And he sits beside, the hadith says he sat beside Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, but he didn't utter a single word. He was so shy that he couldn't even bring up the subject. You know, shyness is a good quality. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, just because you're shy sometimes, it doesn't mean that you're any less of a man. Can anyone doubt the manhood of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam? Sometimes we need a little bit of haya, especially when it comes to these matters. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he sits shyly beside the Holy Prophet and he doesn't say anything. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he says, Ya Ali, atayta li haja? Have you come for a specific matter? The Imam alayhi salam, he says, yes, Ya Rasulullah. Na'am, ataytu khatiban ibnataka Fatima. Ya Rasulullah, I have come to humbly ask you to honor me by giving me the hand of your daughter Fatima. So do you accept me, Ya Rasulullah? Salama was there when Amir al-Mu'mineen made this proposal. She said, فَرَأَيْتُ وَجْهَ النَّبِي يَتَهَلَّلُ فَرَحًا وَسُرُورًا. Salama, she says, I saw many companions come and ask for the hand of Lady Fatima, and the Prophet would quickly shut them down. But when Ali asked for the hand of Fatima, I saw from the face of Rasulullah that he was very joyful. He was very happy. But look, this is 7th century Arabia. Rasulullah doesn't give an answer to Ali. He says, I have to go ask my daughter. And this is a lesson for us. In how many cultures does the father pressure his daughter to get married to someone? How many times is there emotional pressure put on the daughter? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he doesn't give an answer. To Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says, first I have to consult with my daughter Fatima. This is the same, imagine, a man like this coming from a culture that buries female infants alive. You see the shift? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he goes and he speaks with his daughter Fatima. And he says to her, إِنَّ عَلِيًّا قَدْ ذَكَرَ عَنْ أَمْرِكِ شَيْئًا. He says to her that Ali has come to ask for your hand. But before you give an answer, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he says to Fatima, وَإِنِّي سَأَلْتُ رَبِّي أَنْ يُزَوِّجَكِ خَيْرُ خَلْقِهِ وَأَحَبَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ. Oh Fatima, before you answer, I want you to know that I have been praying to Allah that He gives you a husband who is beloved to Him. A father, you don't just make dua that your business is successful. You make dua that you have in the future a good son-in-law. But what does it mean to have a good son-in-law? That he comes from a noble family, that he has a good job, that he looks good. Rasulullah says, I was making dua that the one that marries my daughter is someone who is noble in the eyes of Allah, who is beloved to Allah. And he says, وَقَدْ عَرِفْتُ عَلِيًّا وَفَضْلَهُ وَمُوَاقِفَهُ. He says to Fatima that I know this Ali. Why? Because I raised him. Many children are raised by their parents. But Ali ibn Abi Talib wasn't even raised by his parents. He was raised by the Holy Prophet. Rasulullah says to his daughter that I know this man. I raised him. We all know his contributions to Islam, and he has come today to ask for your hand in marriage. So what do you say? فَسَكَتَتْ. Fatima Zehra alayhi salam, she also has this haya. She remains silent. And then Rasulullah says, Allahu Akbar, sukutuha ridaha. Rasulullah says that her silence is her approval. So he goes and he gives the news to Ali ibn Abi Talib, and then the Holy Prophet calls upon the entire community. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gathers the thousands upon thousands of Muslims at the time in Medina, and he announces, لَقَدْ أَمَرَنِي رَبِّي أَنْ أُزَوِّجَ فَاطِمَةً مِنْ عَلِيٍّ. He says to them, because everyone wanted to know, who is Rasulullah going to give his daughter to? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he makes this announcement. So no one has any hard feelings that this is a matter that was not even decided by me. Many years ago, when I was in Mecca, there was a man who came and ridiculed me because I had no progeny. In Mecca, Rasulullah was called Abtar by Al-As bin Wa'il. He called him Abtar. Abtar literally means an animal whose tail is cut off. The Arabs would call any man who had no sons Abtar, because Rasulullah, his sons died in infancy from Khadijah. So they would call him Abtar. We call him Abul Qasim. Qasim died in infancy. So the Prophet now is saying that today is the fulfillment of Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. That I have given you al-kawthar. Al-kawthar means al-khayr al-kathir, an abundance of good. Through sons? No, through Fatima, because Rasulullah's progeny is from his daughter. لَقَدْ أَمَرَنِي رَبِّي أَنْ أُزَوِّجَ فَاطِمَةً مِنْ عَلِيٍّ. Allah has commanded me to wed Ali to Fatima. And then Rasulullah turns to Ali and he says, لَقَدْ أَمَرَنِي رَبِّي أَنْ أُزَوِّجَكَ فَاطِمَةً أَرَضِيتَ هَذَا الزَّوَاجِ يَا عَلِي. Are you pleased with this union, O Ali, with this marriage? Rasulullah says, the Imam alayhi salam says yes. And the hadith says the Imam went down into sujood. He offered a sajda of gratitude to Allah Azza wa Jal. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon him many different blessings and favors. But Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, look at the blessing of having a virtuous wife. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes down into sujood, thanking Allah for a wife like Fatima Zehra salawatullahi alayha. A few days pass, and some of the wives of the Holy Prophet, they say to the Holy Prophet that, Ya Rasulullah, Ali wants to be with his wife. He wants her to join him at his home. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, when you're a father, it's very difficult to give your daughter. He wants his daughter to remain with him for a few more days. So some of the wives of Rasulullah say, Ya Rasulullah, it's time to give Fatima to Ali. And they say to him that, Ya Rasulullah, if Khadija was alive today, she would be happy that Fatima is under the care of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So allow Fatima to move in with Ali ibn Abi Talib. So Rasulullah says, yes, this will happen tomorrow. Rasulullah calls upon Ali ibn Abi Talib and he says to him, "Oh Ali, do you want to be joined with your wife?" Rasulullah, the Imam alayhi salam says, "Yes, Ya Rasulullah, it would be my honor." Rasulullah says to the Imam, "Do you have a dowry to give her? How much money do you have to give her as a dowry?" The Imam alayhi salam, he says, "Ya Rasulullah, you know me and you know everything that I possess. Ya Rasulullah, I own only 3 things. I possess only 3 things. What are they? My sword, my water container, and my shield." At the age of 21, 22, these are the only 3 things that Ali ibn Abi Talib owns. The clothes on his back, his sword, his shield, and a water container. Did Rasulullah say, "Work for a few more years and then come back to me"? What does the Holy Prophet say? He says, "Oh Ali, as for your sword, Islam needs your sword, so you cannot sell it. As for your water container, you need it because you're a farmer. You need it for your work. Oh Ali, sell your shield because you don't need a shield in the battlefield." Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he goes to the marketplace and he sells his shield, his armor, for 500 dirhams. 500 dirhams. He comes back and this 500 dirhams becomes the mahar of Fatima Zehra salawatullahi alayha.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Rasulullah takes the money. The Imam gives the Holy Prophet 500 dirhams. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he divides this money into 3 parts. He gives some of the money to Bilal and Ammar and some of the other companions, and he says to them, "With 1/3 of it, I want you to buy atr, fragrance and perfume. With the next third, I want you to buy clothing, new clothes for the newlyweds. And the final third of it, or at least a part of the last third, I want you to buy furniture for them." So they go and they purchase these items for the newlyweds. When they furnished the home, very simple furniture. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw some of the household goods, the hadith says he smiled when he saw the simplicity of their home. He said, "Barakallahu liqawmin jullu an aniyatihim min al-khazaf." Rasulullah says, how blessed is this home that the majority of their household goods is made of pottery. It's very simple. Brothers and sisters, this is a lesson for us. The best home that was established in human history, the best family that was established for only 500 dirhams. A small amount of money. Today, we're taught that you have to spend a lot of money on your wedding to ensure that you're going to have a successful صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
SubhanAllah, every Islamic center has AV issues. Nowadays, we're told that we need to spend X amount of dollars on our weddings. This story teaches us that it's more important to invest in your marriage than your wedding. Invest more in your marriage than on that one night. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, he says to Ali ibn Abi Talib that take a portion of this money so we can have a walima, so we can have a dinner for the community. Rasulullah says, you go and purchase some dates, I will go purchase the meat and the bread. So with this small amount of money, they go purchase the food to prepare for the dinner. When they purchase the food, Rasulullah says, I'll cook the food. Imagine the humility of Rasulullah. So many would have been honored to cook the food. Rasulullah says, I want to do it myself. This is what makes the personality of the Prophet so attractive. So humble, so down to earth. And this shows us that many times when young men ask for someone else's daughter in marriage, they put all of the burden on the man. They put all of the burden on the man. Rasulullah here is teaching us that there needs to be cooperation. Both sides need to help. Rasulullah said to Ali, you go purchase the food and I'll help you cook. We don't need to break people's back when it comes to wedding celebrations. There needs to be a joint effort. Rasulullah says, I'll cook the food. Oh Ali, go to the mosque and announce, give an open invitation for everyone to attend the walima of Fatima. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he goes to the masjid, he ascends on the minbar, he sees the masjid is full. Can you imagine you give an invitation, a dinner invitation to a mosque that's full of people? The hadith says the Imam, he saw there were many people in the mosque and he invited all of them. And the Imam probably saw in their eyes that they were all hungry, they were going to come. The hadith says Rasulullah noticed some concern in the eyes of Ali that maybe we don't have enough food to feed all of the people. Because again, they had a small amount of money and they purchased a little bit of food. Rasulullah says to Ali, open invitation. When Rasulullah saw that Ali was worried that the food would not be enough for everyone, Rasulullah turns to Ali and he says, Ya Ali, inni sa'ad'u Allah bil barakah. Oh Ali, don't worry. I'll make dua that there's barakah in this food. Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, he says, I swear by Allah, 4,000 people came to the walima of Fatima. They ate and they drank and there was still enough for me and Fatima to take home. Do you know when Allah puts barakah in your food, in your work, in your efforts? When you're sincere. Do you think Ali ibn Abi Talib was trying to show off when he gave a public invitation? Many people today, their weddings are all about showing off. Let's take pictures, put it on Instagram, so fulan and fulan, they see it and they recognize that we took the wedding culture to another level, right? They kept it very simple. So after this walima took place, it was now time to escort the new bride to the groom. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi called upon his wives and he told them that I want you to accompany Fatima so we can walk her and escort her to the house of her husband. She was riding on a mule. The wives of the Prophet, they were walking beside her and they were reciting poetry. They were saying, Fatima khayru nisa al-bashar. Fatima is the best of all women. وَمَنْ لَهَا وَجْهٌ كَوَجْهِ الْقَمَرِ. Who has a face that is more luminous than the face of Fatima? زَوَّجَكِ اللَّهُ فَتًى فَاضِلًا. Allah married you to a noble young man. يُدْعَى عَلِيًّا خَيْرَ مَنْ فِي الْحَضَرِ. Allah married you to a noble young man by the name of Ali, who there is no one who is equal to. Fatima alayhi salam, when she reaches the home of Ali, by the way, Ali ibn Abi Talib didn't own his house. He was renting his house. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Right, today, if someone is renting, the Imam alayhi salam was renting. When Fatima to Zehra dismounts, when she comes down, there's a beautiful moment here where Rasulullah calls upon Fatima and he calls upon Ali. And he holds the hand of Ali and he puts the hand of Ali in the hand of Fatima. And he turns to Ali and he says, Ya Ali, ni'ma zawja zawjatuk. Oh Ali, you have the best wife. And then he turns to Fatima and he says, oh Fatima, Allah has given you the best husband. Rasulullah wants to plant the seed of appreciation. You know, brothers and sisters, how many of you have heard of Allama Tabatabai, the author of Tafsir al-Mizan? Almost all of you have heard of Tafsir al-Mizan, yes? This exhaustive commentary of the Quran. Anyone who wants to lecture on the Quran, anyone who wants to prepare lectures on the Holy Quran uses Tafsir al-Mizan as one of the primary references. Do you know Allama Tabatabai? Do you know what he says? He says that I would not have reached this level if it was not for my wife. She has been my partner in this journey. It took him 20 years to write Tafsir al-Mizan. He says, I still remember all of the nights when my wife would make tea and she would bring me tea as I was writing this tafsir. She was my emotional backbone during this time period. And he says, any book that I have written, including Tafsir al-Mizan, she deserves half of the credit. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's not Ali and Fatima, they will appreciate each other without Rasulullah saying anything. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he wants you and I to hear that in order for this love to grow and to flourish, there has to be appreciation. You can't take each other for granted. The hadith says, Rasulullah then asks all of his wives, he asks everybody to leave, to allow the newlyweds to enjoy privacy. Asma bint Umays, she remains with Fatima. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, didn't I ask everyone to leave? Why are you remaining behind? Didn't you hear me, O Asma? Asma says, Ya Rasulullah, ma qasadtu khilafak. Ya Rasulullah, I was not intending on disobeying you. It was not my intention to go against your order. وَلَكِنْ أَعْطَيْتُ خَدِيجَةَ عَهْدًا. That I promised Khadija when she was in her last days. It seems that Khadija salamullahi alayha, she knew that she would pass away. And she looks at Asma bint Umays, and perhaps she told her that if you live long enough to see my daughter Fatima get married, I want you to stay with her for a few moments on her wedding day and represent me. This is a day when a mother and a daughter, they bond. They exchange words of advice. Khadija says, I want you to be with her on that day. This story, brothers and sisters, is not just so we can shed some tears and say, oh, how beautiful, and then go on with our lives. The moral of this story is we have to simplify the marriage process. We have to look for the right things when we're choosing a spouse. We have to ask the right questions. Did Rasulullah ask Ali ibn Abi Talib, how much do you have in your bank account? Did he ask him about these superficial things? Or was it enough that he was a man of piety?